I am trying to make travel hacking more normalized for people like me, young people, especially other Virgin Islanders, for example, other young Black women, other young Black men, just so that I can see
Mhm.
more of us using travel hacking to be able to travel more, because that's been a big part of my story.
Welcome to the Travel Not to Escape podcast. I'm your host, Jolene on the Go, solo female traveler and creative entrepreneur. Think of me as your skydive instructor, empowering you to take the leap into solo travel to push past your fears and transform your life. Join me every Tuesday as we explore the world of solo travel with purpose and discover how you can use it for your personal transformation, learn how to make meaningful connections around the world, and reignite your spirit of play. We aren't just talking about traveling to find ourselves anymore. We're all about doing the work to understand who we authentically are, breaking through our limiting beliefs, and taking the leaps to manifest lives we are excited about. Through interviews, solo episodes, meditations, each episode is packed with practical tips, strategies, and inspiring stories from guests who have transformed their lives through solo travel. Whether you're a seasoned traveler or just starting out on your journey, the Travel Not to Escape podcast is here to inspire and empower you to solo travel with purpose. Strap on your helmet. We're about to jump headfirst into the journey of a lifetime. Are you ready? Let's go. Hey navigators, welcome back to another episode of Travel Not to Escape. Before we dive into this week's episode, I want to ask, how do you feel about your friendship making skills? Because a big fear that comes up with solo travel is, how can I make friends in a new city? And not just small talk friends, but meaningful friendships filled with laughter and deep conversations. Friends that you stay connected with, even if you're in different cities. And a lot of the resources that are out there for connection aren't that easy to find. You can go down the route of doing multiple Google or Facebook searches, going to endless amounts of events, and still feeling pretty lonely and empty. So this is a reason why I created Passport to Connection. I've turned the process of making friendships anywhere in the world into a fun board game style membership where there are clear steps to this journey and resources for you to understand the how in making friendships, plus a supportive community to go on this journey with you. So if you want to find out more and how you can join, head to travelnottoescape.com/friends. See y'all there. Welcome to today's Travel Not to Escape episode. I'm so excited to have our guest on, Niqua, content creator, the face of Traveling with Niqua, where she showcases unforgettable travel experiences. And she is the author of the ebook, Your Go-To Travel Guide, with 100+ practical tips, hacks, and strategies. So in today's episode, we're going to get to know Niqua's story of transformation through travel. Thank you so much for coming on for today.
Thank you so much.
And where are you joining us from right now?
Yes, so I'm actually based in the US and I am in Florida,
Oh, we're in Florida.
Orlando.
Oh, nice. I wanted to ask, so I start my podcast off with a question on play. And the question is, what was your favorite childhood activity?
So, my favorite childhood activity was bike riding. I didn't
Oh.
want to say travel because activity
Yeah.
means more of doing more outdoor type things, because we did travel as well as a family, but
Okay. And was it, what aspect of the bike riding did you really?
I feel like it was just very freeing. There was no rules really. You were just riding wherever around the neighborhood, doing racing with other kids or your siblings.
Oh.
So that's what connected for me.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Because with biking, initially I was thinking kinesthetic because you're moving your
Hmm.
body. But the way
Yes.
that you described it was very much exploring and
Yes.
competition, actually.
Yes. There was also some benefits with moving, as you said, but those two were good explanation there.
Yeah, those are the things that lit you up more was the exploration, which makes sense with the travel, and
Yes.
also competition, which I'm excited to see how that trickles into the rest of your story as well. So, as we dive in, let's start off with a bit about your background. Where are you from, where you grew up, and how you found your way to travel and solo travel?
Yeah, so thank you again for having me. I'm Nika, and I am originally from the beautiful island of Virgin Gorda in the Virgin Islands on the British side. So I grew up on an 8.5 square mile island, and it
Oh,
was
wow. That's
definitely an
small.
amazing, yes, very small, amazing upbringing growing up in the Caribbean. So I really got my SPAC from travel based on the experiences that my parents were able to afford to me. My
Mm.
mom, especially, she was definitely more of the traveler compared to my dad. He was more like, here's the money, you can go on these trips, but he was not big on travel himself.
I
Mom
mean, thank
kind of like,
God, right?
yes. So my mom took more of the planning and organizing and things like that for our family trips. And yeah, I traveled throughout my childhood, going to nearby islands or traveling to the US, to different states where we had family, or going on Caribbean cruises and different islands throughout the Caribbean and countries like Canada, etc.
Oh, that's amazing that you were able to do that at such a young age. When did you first start traveling? Like at what age? Were you still a baby
Yeah,
or
I
do
was
you have
pretty much
memories?
yeah, I was pretty much like a little baby.
That's the best. So that your mom really had the travel bug, which is
Yes,
amazing to have that as a family to grow into.
exactly.
So, when you became an adult, what did travel look like for you growing up?
So I think one of the things I would say, travel has definitely expanded for me now that I am older and I can broaden my horizons with where I'm going. As I
Mhm.
mentioned, a lot of my childhood travels that I remember has was primarily in the Caribbean or to nearby countries like the US, where I may have visited maybe two or three different states, but not much. So Florida, New York, those are the two main states that I remember traveling to, and then
Mm.
other countries would have been Canada. But pretty much everything was in North America. I
Mm.
never really got to travel outside of North America. So I feel like now that I'm older, my focus has been to still be exploring North America, but again, really expanding and going to other continents.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that makes sense. You had a recent birthday, right? I think I saw.
Yes, yes. I did celebrate my birthday a couple weeks ago. We are recording this in March. So actually about 1 month ago.
Oh, nice. What did you do for your birthday?
So I was actually in the UAE, and then I also went to Qatar.
Oh, okay. So talk about expanding your
Yes,
travel distance and your adventures. That's amazing. And did
yes.
you go solo? Did you go with friends? What was that
I,
experience?
I actually did go with friends, and one of my friends was actually my sister. So it was really good to
Oh,
have
nice.
that experience with my sister. She's pretty much my best friend. Having her there, and one of my other very close friends was 10 out of 10, great experience.
Oh, amazing. That's all you can hope for a birthday
Yes,
trip as well, right? Is
yes.
to have good connections and a good time. How many siblings do you have?
I have two siblings,
Okay. So your sister and do you
and
have a
then I have a
brother as well?
brother. Yes.
Are they
Yep.
also into travel?
I feel compared to all three of us, I'm definitely one that's always traveling. So I'm probably
Mhm.
the most well traveled. And then I would say my brother and then my sister. She is open to traveling and she does travel. But I feel like, for example, this trip was one of her furthest trips that she's ever done.
Oh.
And she's the oldest of the three. So she's also just getting started of going beyond North America travel.
Oh, interesting. So
Yeah,
it was different even though you all were exposed to travel as a
exactly.
family, you all took on different levels as you grew up.
Yeah. And I think that's also based on the proximity as well, because I moved from the Virgin Islands to the US. My sister still lives in the Virgin Islands. So travel for me, and obviously family dynamics and things like that, impacts one's ability to travel more as well, which is something that
Mhm.
I always try to get people to understand and remember, that
Yeah.
location and just the means and access plays a huge role into people's ability to travel.
Yeah, 100%. Passport privilege is definitely a thing as well
True.
that you have to factor in terms of getting visas and
Right.
the travel style. There's so many aspects
Different
that go
things.
into it. So when did you move from the Virgin Islands to the US?
So I've been in the US for over a decade now. I did complete my studies in the Virgin Islands up to my associate's degree in community college. And then I moved to the US so that I could expand my studies at university.
Okay, and what did you study initially?
I studied accounting and also I have an MBA.
And
Yes.
I think you're also creating content around the finances piece, right?
Yes, I actually do have a brand and a business called Financially Winning, and I focus on personal finance, on financially winning, and I create content around that. And I do incorporate a lot of finance type content in traveling with Nica's content as well, because of course, travel costs money. Even with me as a
Mhm.
travel hacker, I do all the rewards and points and miles, but travel still costs money. So I do cost breakdowns when I can. I also just normally share the cost for different activities and things that I'm doing so that people can get a better picture of when they travel to these destinations, what they can expect cost wise.
Yeah, and that's so important. I love that you're doing that because that's the biggest hurdle that a lot of people cite when they want to
Right.
travel. They think, "Oh, okay, well, I can't afford it." That's the automatic
Exactly.
statement that they say, and they don't realize because there's not as much information out there to really lower that barrier for people to be able
Right.
to see this is what travel looks like if you compare it to what you're spending in the US or what your weekend spending is. These
True.
are ways that you are able to, if you want to prioritize travel, be able to actually accomplish that. So I love that you're sharing that type of content too, because it's also, I love the transparency in it and also the combination in your background
Yes.
with your passion, I think is really important.
Yes, it's definitely a good way to incorporate my love for finance and my passion for educating people on the finance level and just incorporating that with another thing that I am passionate about, which is travel.
So when you went to school in finance, finished your degree, were you doing a lot of traveling around that time or when did your personal travel bug start?
Yeah, I think I really had that travel bug from the beginning, from
Mhm.
my upbringing. And one of the things that did help me a lot to travel more is when I did move and I was in university. So I did find ways to be able to travel. I was heavily involved on campus, especially in undergrad. I was going to different conferences that were funded by SGA. I was applying for different scholarships that would afford me the ability to maybe travel for the ceremony and things like that. So I was able to travel during undergrad, even though I was a full time college student. And then I would say in grad school, it definitely picked up more because I did have a very flexible grad school program where I didn't have to attend in person. So I
Oh, nice.
leveraged that and also working full time to start funding more of my wanderlust. And that really gave me the edge that I needed to continue and expanding my traveling further.
And as you were starting to expand your travels,
Mhm.
were you able to find people to go with you the majority of the time, or were you splitting off and doing more solo travels around this time?
I think that it definitely was a mix for me. I would say I took my first solo trip. It was in 2017, if I'm not mistaken. And I went to
Mhm.
New Orleans. And that
Oh,
wasn't
nice.
because maybe someone canceled on me or anything like that. I know that's how a lot of people solo journeys
Hmm.
kind of start sometimes when it's more so I had this trip planned and then everyone
Hmm.
canceled on me. I would at least say, thankfully, my solo journey did not begin that way. It was very positive. I just had some time in between my internship and the next thing that I was going to be doing. So I decided to just randomly look up a flight. I saw it was really cheap to go to New Orleans. I heard good things about it. And I just went, I just
Ah,
left.
I love that.
So,
And actually, my travel journey started. I initially was going to go with people, but I was like, I'm going to celebrate my
gotcha.
birthday regardless. So I'm going to
Right.
go solo. So I definitely fall under that category. Were there any hesitations when you first jumped into doing that by yourself, or because you had been so well traveled prior, it was just like, okay, I guess I'm going to go? What was that feeling like for you?
At that time, there were definitely hesitations. But one of the things I would say that really helped me was I was already doing a lot of things by myself in my city. So that helped me to feel a little bit comfortable to say that I go to eat by myself sometimes here, Or at the time, for example, had my own apartment, things like that.
Hmm.
So I felt I was already doing things on my own, even though there was some hesitation. The love or the idea of saying that I'm going to just do this overweighed the con of me being a little hesitant at first.
Yeah, yeah. There's that underlying drive, that explorer energy where you're like, okay,
Exactly.
we gotta satisfy this thirst somehow. What was that, if you could think back to that first trip then,
Hmm.
what were some ways that you prepared on that trip
Hmm.
that made you feel a little bit more comfortable to go on your own? And from there, have you taken some of those same tips, or maybe were there lessons from that trip that have carried on to the rest of your travels?
Yeah. So one of the things I would say is I did book a very central hotel
Mhm.
accommodation. So that really helped me to feel comfortable with at least being in the city center. So I felt like I was
Mhm.
able to walk to things just comfortably. If I was trying to say, okay, I was exhausted for the day, or maybe I just didn't like an experience, maybe at a restaurant or something like that, I knew that I could easily just go back to my hotel because it was nearby. That also had
Mhm.
saved me on costs from maybe doing a rental car or a lot of Ubers
Mhm.
because I was able to be in that central area and I could walk to a lot of the things that I did have planned. So I think that was definitely helpful in my preparation for that solo trip. And then I did have a general itinerary for what I wanted to do. And I made sure that I shared that with others so people would know where I was at.
Mhm.
So those are definitely tips that I still do today on all of my solo trips. Obviously, I've definitely added some things when it comes to safety, just using different safety tools like door
Mhm.
alarms, door locks. But when it comes to the actual preparation, I'm still doing a lot of the same things that I did from my first solo trip: booking central accommodations, sharing my location, sharing my itinerary with others, etc.
Yeah, those are great tips to start off and very important actually, because
Right.
I think one of the biggest things that people, especially if there's hesitation regarding the cost, one of the biggest ways people try to cut the cost is by staying somewhere really cheap or being able to couch surf or just crash on someone's couch, hostel, whatever that is.
Yes.
But a lot of hostels tend to not necessarily be central, where you need to get on public transportation or you need
Right.
to take an Uber from far away. And you bring up a good point in the fact that you actually might save money from Ubering or transportation, the safety aspect, the honestly, the being able to just go back if you don't want to, which means you're not carrying all of the things that you need for the day. So your pack is
Exactly.
much smaller and you're much less of a target if you're not carrying a big backpack with everything you need for the day, with your
Right.
tech or whatever is included. So I think those are really important considerations when you go down into the minutia of it that you might not consider when you're thinking, okay, travel, finances, yes, safety, but how, in what way are you wanting to balance safety and finances in that regard?
Exactly. And that's a really good point because one of the things I don't recommend for beginner solo travelers, I would say people who are maybe just getting started, do maybe they do a few things in their hometown and they want to actually take a trip and take the leap. You have to decide on the balance between safety and your finances. If you have to compromise your safety, then I don't think that you should take that trip. I think you should wait to be able to maybe save up a little bit more or find ways where you
Mhm.
can still have a more comfortable and also affordable accommodations, but it doesn't compromise your safety. So just finding that balance. I wouldn't recommend for individuals to start solo traveling, women to start solo traveling without also considering their safety being top priority.
Yeah, 100%. And there's ways that you can solo travel and ease into it, as you mentioned, where it's more affordable in that you're not maybe spending all that money on a plane ticket. So that allows you to spend more on the accommodations that are central, or that allows you
Exactly.
to take a more safe ride home rather than a
Exactly.
night bus or whatever, walking home, for example, hitchhiking, which like I say all these things because I've done all these things.
Yeah.
I'm like, there's a reason why we create content now to help other
Right.
women is
Exactly.
there's a lot of things we had to learn the hard way and
Yes.
things that you don't need to learn the hard way if there's other people
True.
that are willing to share that information with you. Yeah, if you want to avoid the late night hitchhiking and the potential safety issues, definitely have some considerations regarding this. So thank you for sharing
Absolutely.
that regarding your first trip in New Orleans. So that was your first trip. And then how
Yes.
was travel a part of your life going forward? How often were you traveling and what style of travel did you do and do you do now?
So I would say during those years when I was completing grad school, I picked up a lot on my travel. So even as a full-time student and also a full-time employee, because I was working full-time in my field, I picked up and I was traveling, if I remember correctly, at least about 10 months out of the year. So that
Mm.
would be where I was traveling to different states or different countries, visiting my family in the Virgin Islands, just a mix of different travel. So I think for me, once I did take that first solo trip, my goal was at a minimum that I would do at least one solo trip every single year after that. And I have done that. And I've
Oh,
done
nice.
obviously more than one in more so of the recent years. I can even look back at the last 2 years, and I've definitely done more than one a year. And I've had a mix of just different travel experiences, either with family or friends or a significant other over the years.
And for you, what would you say would be the biggest pro and
Mhm.
con of solo travel versus other types of travel?
I would say the biggest pro for me when it comes to solo travel is it gives me the opportunity to just be by myself completely, in the sense of I'm not really worried about, oh, let me try to accommodate someone else's plans, or maybe someone doesn't like to eat certain foods, or
Mhm.
let's say maybe people are not as interested in going to a destination that I am. So one of the things I've realized is that most of my solo trips is not that I don't have people to go with. I'm intentionally solo traveling because I do want to have that connection with myself. And that's why I made it the goal of at least one a year, one solo trip a year. So that would be one of the pros for me, is just being able to go at my own pace at least once a year and do my own thing. One of the cons I would say is I think depending on the destination, there are destinations that I personally feel that I do not want to go solo. I feel
Mm.
like there are some destinations, and not really from the romanticized kind of part, because a lot of people think, for example, oh, I don't want to go to the Maldives if I'm not with my significant other or
Yeah.
whatever. I don't really think like that, because I'm like, we could travel there if we want to. We can go wherever we want
Mhm.
to. So I don't really think in that aspect. For me, it's more so of there's activities in certain
Mm.
countries that is like, that would be so cool to share with somebody else, whether it's a friend or a sibling or whatever it may be. So I think that would be one of the cons to me about solo travel, is that you could probably feel that, man, I would have probably liked to explore this destination with somebody else.
Yeah. And do you find that you do end up meeting a lot of people when you solo travel?
I do think that I do meet a lot of people when I solo travel. I think there's definitely a mix with obviously connecting more with locals if you're
Mhm.
doing different activities where you're able to connect more with locals. And that's my type of travel. I try to
Mhm.
also support local businesses and guides. If I'm hiring a driver, I would try my best to get a more local person. If it's a guide, I would want to more connect with a local guide that can really get me to connect with the local community. And I do a lot of
Mhm.
different group activities, even when I'm solo traveling, like cooking classes, for example, because
Mm.
nine out
Yeah.
of 10, somebody else is booking that cooking class as well.
Mhm.
So I have the opportunity to connect with other people and share a meal or share and experience.
Yeah, those are one of my favorite activities to do as well.
Yeah.
What other types of authentic travel experiences stick out to you in terms of some of your past places that you visited?
It's so hard sometimes when I'm
I
trying to
know there's
think so many, but one of the ones that I would highlight is my experience visiting Palenque in Colombia. So
oh.
Palenque is actually one of the first free black towns of enslaved Africans in the Americas. And
Mm.
that was my first time really being able to learn more about Palenque. It was something that I saw online and I was like, what is this place? Where is it? What is this about? And I was actually able to travel to Colombia in 2020. And that experience was 10 out of 10. It was really a great experience for me to connect with the local people there and to learn more about their connection to the motherland. Because at that time, I had not gotten to visit the continent of Africa as yet. So I just felt
Mhm.
like that was my first introduction, just being still in the Americas, but it just really felt, I was like, wow. And then later,
Mhm.
at a later time, I was able to finally go to the continent and visit multiple countries there. Kenya, for example, which was 10 out of 10, a great experience as well.
Oh, wait, tell me about Kenya because I haven't been to anywhere in Africa yet, and I'm
Yeah.
hoping, crossing my fingers, that in the next year or two, I will be able to. Actually, one of my previous podcast guests,
Uh
she
huh.
runs tours for women by women
Oh,
in East and South
wow.
Africa. So if you want to go back, you let me know because you can connect with her.
Yes.
But her biggest thing that I didn't realize was
Hmm.
that there's actually a lot of discrimination against female tour
Mm.
operators within
Wow.
East and South Africa, which is her area of
Yeah.
expertise. And she was recounting stories of how, because of just the opportunities that weren't available, a lot of tour operators had to go from having a C-section to back on safari, those types
My
of things. So
goodness.
one of
Wow.
the, yeah, it's wild. So it's one of
That's
the reasons why she
crazy.
started the company, because she's a female business owner who
Okay.
employs female tour operators for specifically female group tours. So I was like, oh, yeah, that's amazing because there's a lot of, I think, lack of information about
Yes.
what it's like traveling in Africa. And I love having firsthand experiences of, okay, you tell me what were some of the highlights,
Yeah.
countries that you visit, and some of the those travel experiences that really stick with you.
Yeah. So my first country on the continent was Kenya. And that experience was a gateway to just so many amazing opportunities. I was able to go on my first safari in Kenya, and we were in Masamara, in the Masamara National Reserve. We also got to connect with the local Maasai tribe in Kenya. And I think that experience really made me feel that and obviously when you're traveling so much and you're meeting different people, there's obviously different travel experiences in each country or city or town that you visit. But one of the things, connecting with the Maasai tribe in Kenya, it was just so incredible, so eye opening, just seeing how they continue to practice their religion and their local language and how they go about their everyday life. We were also able to just visit the school and see how the children are taught on a daily basis and just really see how they use their resources to be able to have a sustainable community. That was definitely a very eye-opening and really great travel experience for me personally.
Oh, wow. Yeah, and that's the beauty of travel, is being actually being able to see and connect with real people and not necessarily just check a box of went there, did that, flew through the airport, and now I can say I went to that country, right? I think there was a controversial post that you and I
Exactly.
were connecting on,
Yes.
and I think it's so important that, yes, people have bucket lists, and yes, people have certain goals in terms of travel, but you might miss out on some of these beautiful experiences like the one that you just shared because you only went and stayed for a day just to say you went there, right? You did
Right.
a long layover and then that was a checkbox on the list. But travel, really at the heart of it, is connection
Right.
with yourself. If you're solo traveling, it gives you that time to connect, connecting with the people that are there, the locals, other travelers that you might be encountering, and then connecting with the actual location, the land, the things that you're seeing and experiencing, and the cultures as well. And you miss a lot of that when you just breeze through it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I think there's obviously different travel styles for everyone. And I
Hmm.
always tell people when you are traveling, everyone has their different travel styles. There are people who are, I think, primarily traveling to be like, oh, I've been to XYZ countries or this many cities. And I always do tell people that your travel style is your travel style, but I do try to
Hmm.
always encourage for more in-depth travel if you can. I know one of the
Hmm.
issues with being, for example, in the US is that a lot of
Hmm.
people have issues when it comes to time off. So I
Hmm.
think when you are able to maximize and travel to multiple destinations, even though you are not able to maybe stay for 2 weeks or a month at a time. There's still ways in the shorter travel periods where you can still get that connection. So there
Hmm.
would be times where I may only be able to travel to a country using a stopover program or something like that. But one of the things that I always do is I try to find that local connection, whether I'm there for 10 hours or 10 days. So I think it's about the intention and not
Hmm.
always based on, okay, if you can only stay the 10 hours based on your schedule, how can you still connect with the locals? How can you still form that connection to the place that may have you yearning for more?
That's a beautiful point. I love that. And you hit on a an issue that is very common. Being from the US, I totally understand the lack of vacation policy that is available. So it's like finances is the top factor. And then from there, it's the availability and time and
Yes,
vacation. And these are some really common things that hold people back from travel. And yeah, of course,
exactly.
it's if you only can travel a certain way because of those two limitations and you still want to travel, then yes, you still travel, but
Exactly.
add in the intention of what do you want to get out of the experience? I think that's a really
Exactly.
important question. And it's encouraging people to go a little deeper if they can in
Of
that
course.
time span because of the benefits that they can get from going deeper within that experience.
Exactly.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah, it's such an interesting topic too because I
It
think
is.
there's been a shift in the travel industry as well.
Mm-hmm.
I think for so long you had so much in the media saying 30 under 30 countries or visit all the countries at the
Yes.
youngest age or
Yes.
whatever it is. It's the promotion of these checkbox bucket list type of media stories that make it an aspirational goal for a lot of people. So I think that
Yes.
yes, I have go see all the wonders of the world on my list. Don't
Too,
get me
me
wrong.
too.
Right? I have my own bucket list for sure. No
Yes,
judgment, honestly, but it's
of
more of
course.
a different way. Here's another type of style that is available to you if you don't feel called to maybe adhere to more of the mainstream type of
Exactly.
aspirational travel that is out there in the media. I think the
Yep.
biggest takeaway is that you do you, right? However you want to travel, no one should be shamed for what their
Right.
style of travel is. And even
Yes.
though my podcast is all focused on intentional travel and purposeful travel because I do want to
Mm-hmm.
encourage at least part of the travel to have more of that reflective aspect, but
Mm-hmm.
sometimes you don't want to do deep work, and that is also perfectly fine. I don't think that
True.
you should have to do deep work all the time, which is why one of the foundations of the podcast and the business is also play. Because sometimes you just
Yes,
want to do something because it feels good and it lights you
exactly.
up and it's joyful. So whatever
Yes,
makes everyone feel joyful, it's all about balance, right?
yes,
Balancing the play with the deep work and balancing all the different parts of life as well with travel. And you also, that is also one of your pillars as well, right? Is balanced travel.
yes.
And personally, what does that look like for you?
One of the things is I feel that when people talk about travel, when it comes to the finance aspect, it's where it's, oh, you're a budget traveler or you're a luxury traveler. It depends on the trip.
Yeah.
For me, it's more so traveling with Niqua, the platform, and try to focus again more so on showing people that there's different ways to do different things when it comes to travel. One of the things for me when it comes to balanced travel, a lot of people think that travel has to be black and white. And it's
Mhm.
either you're a budget traveler or you're a luxury traveler when it comes to the finance aspect of it. But I think for me, it really depends on the trip.
Mhm.
I'm where I would find ways to save probably on every single trip. But then there are other trips where I'm willing to spend a little bit more to get the experience that I want to have. So whether that's doing certain activities or staying in certain hotels or accommodations, I will not compromise on that. But then for other trips, I might say, you know what, actually, let me choose this activity instead because I'm not so pressed about doing zip lining. So let me do another activity that's so fun, but is more affordable.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. It depends on where you're going. I think that's such an underrated comment because I think when you're on social media, I think you see only the beautiful photos
Yeah,
and it looks lavish. It looks like, oh, it's so bright and colorful and bougie. Maybe I took a bus to get there, or maybe
exactly.
I'm staying with a local instead. And the main part of that experience that I wanted to splurge on was the activity and not
Exactly.
necessarily the accommodation or the transportation. So you can be bougie in one area and not so bougie in the other versus have everything be completely luxe or the opposite.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's exactly what I'm trying to say when it comes to travel. So there would
Mhm.
be sometimes, let's say I'm visiting a certain US state. I may have family there or a friend there. So instead of maybe me
Mhm.
splurging on an expensive hotel, and if it's a very short trip, I may say, you know what, I'll just save money there and I don't have a problem with visiting my friend because they wanted me to come in town
Mhm.
versus, oh, I paid for a hotel in New York City, for example. I have family that
Mhm.
lives in New York,
It's wild. Yeah.
very comfortable accommodations for me. So it's, I
Mhm.
may say, yes, I'm going to New York, but I may not say, oh, but I'm not staying in Times Square. So
Yeah.
it doesn't make that travel experience any less or any better than anyone else's New York
Mhm.
travel experience. It just means that's what I chose to do for that time.
Exactly. And there's definitely time for the full bougie type of
Exactly.
experiences and other times where it's, oh, it's a bit of a balance or one or the other. But yeah, I feel the same way
Exactly.
about New York. $500 a night for a hotel room
No,
is
I'm not gonna
wild.
do it.
Like
I am not
that's
gonna
a
do it.
whole months of expenses. Yeah, and I think my perspective has shifted since I started traveling full time
Yeah.
because like in Bali you can spend $500 and that
Mhm.
would be more than enough for rent for the whole month.
Right, right.
So when you think about that and you're like, "Oh my god, that's one night stay in New York." It makes me reconsider some of
I
the
know, it's
ways that I'm
crazy.
spending my money.
Yeah, and I think, as I said, just all about balance travel. If maybe New York is your bucket list destination and you really want to have the complete city
Mhm.
experience, you may then opt to say, hey, I'm going all out. I'm doing the Times Square Hotel. I'm doing all of that. And even when it comes to using public transportation. So, for example, some countries, I'm definitely more leaning towards public transportation than others. So
Mhm.
when I do go to certain countries in Europe, for example, I do feel they have a very, from the countries that I've been to in Europe, and I've definitely been to more than like seven. So for those countries that I've been to, except probably Iceland, all the other ones, I felt like their public transportation was 10 out of 10. Like I was
Hmm.
getting the bus passes, to get on the trains or the trams or whatever it may be. But then other countries, I may say, what is better for me to pay the money to rent a car and
Yeah.
have my own experience that way.
I 100% agree with that. And the things that you might think, so if you're from the US and from a city where public transportation isn't a thing, I'm originally from California, but
Mhm.
then I moved to Chicago. So in California, I'm like, I would rather not take public transport in
Yeah.
LA, honestly. But in Chicago, I was like, yeah, I'll take the public transport up to us.
Ex-
But in Europe, yeah, in Europe, when there's 24-hour types of trains, it's just more accessible. It connects to more locations. Even in New York, right? There's a lot
yeah,
more connection, a lot more people up at all hours in the night.
exactly.
So the perception of what is, I guess, bougie or not bougie, it also varies depending
Yes,
on the city that you're
absolutely.
going to and what is the common mode of transportation for locals as well, right? So if you're thinking, oh, I'm going to go ride my bike, but I'm in California and I'm not at the beach, right? So if I'm riding my bike in downtown LA, that's not a thing really, right? There's too
Right.
much cars.
Gotcha.
It's just not a thing people do. But
Right.
if you're in Amsterdam, why
I
are
was
you
about
not
to
riding
say
a bike?
Amsterdam. When I went to Amsterdam, I was low key, should I have gotten a bike? I was
Yeah.
actually doing a bike tour and it got canceled, unfortunately, because I was
uh,
trying to experience the city by bike because I know that was such a big thing there. Like they have a huge bike culture and
yeah.
community. So I was trying to do that, but my tour got canceled the night before, I think. So I unfortunately did not get to ride my bike in Amsterdam, but I was sensing that even with my research before I got there. And when I actually got there, I was like, okay, they're not kidding. They like their bikes.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Actually, another podcast guest I interviewed, she's all
Uh
about
huh.
sustainable travel, and she was
Hmm.
telling me she was taking bikes across countries and just bike
Wow.
yeah, on her bike and just stopping in different places along the way. And I was like, wow, that is
Gotcha.
you
That's
really
actually
she's
dedication.
originally
Yeah.
yeah, originally from the Netherlands. And so that made a lot of sense once I realized it. So yeah, every country, I think it's a good point that you brought up. Like every country has its own version of what is normal. And so like what
Exactly.
you might think is different in your country, when you go to somewhere else, it's more normalized. And because it's more normalized, it's actually a safer, more common way to maybe do transportation, for example. Same thing with
Yeah.
hostels, for example. In the
Hmm.
US, I think there's a revival of hostels nowadays because
Hmm.
of remote work and just accessibility. But before, US didn't really have that great of a hostel system. I don't know what it is right
Yeah.
now because I actually haven't done that recently, but I know
Gotcha.
if you're in Europe, it's a lot more common to do hostels
Hmm.
in Europe, and the systems are there with the activities and the amenities that support that and make it a little bit more comfortable as well. Yeah, the different systems it's you have to adapt to each of the locations.
Absolutely.
So I'm curious. So you have recently put out an ebook with over 100 tips, hacks, strategies. I don't know if there's one or two that really stick
Yeah.
out to you that you're excited to share. I'd love to hear them.
Yeah, honestly, there's just so many. And that's one of the reasons that I did write my first travel ebook. And
Yay.
it was just more, thank you so much. And it was more to put everything into kind of one resource because I
Mm,
do enjoy obviously connecting with my community, answering their questions, and helping them because that's what traveling with Nika is all about, sharing those experiences and then helping others by providing those tips, hacks, and strategies. So, one of the ones I would say is a lot of people talk about Google Flights and things like that a lot,
mhm,
but a lot of people don't actually utilize a lot of the benefits that Google Flights actually offers. So, one of the things that
mm.
I love about Google Flights is their price tracking tools. So, that helps me to figure out when a flight that I'm trying to book is good to book or it's too expensive or it lowered in price because you can sign up for literally alerts and they will send you alerts every time something happens with the flight that you're tracking. So if it goes up, they're
Oh.
going to tell you. If it goes down, they're going to tell you. And they also tell you when if you look deeper into the analytics on the Google Flights platform, you would actually see if it's a good time to book, you would see what people normally pay for flights like this. You would see charts showing you that, oh, the price actually went up. It was cheaper yesterday, and different things like that. But normally people may only just go search and then they book a flight. But I'm like, you have to utilize more of the analytics that comes with Google Flights to really be able to maximize and get your bang for your buck.
Ooh, that's a great tip. And I, to be honest, have not dived into Google Flights analytics myself
Yeah.
recently. A lot of my flights have been ad hoc of, okay, I feel like I'm gonna fly today. So
Yeah.
like
Gotcha.
I haven't quite done a lot of planning on a lot of my
Mm-hmm.
flights, but
Mm-hmm.
I will be doing one major flight back to the US, I think,
Oh, gotcha.
soon. So I think that'll be really interesting because when I was using it before, my process includes using Skyscanner, Google Flights, Flight
Yeah.
Connections, and then Hopper, as well as a
Gotcha.
couple other ones. So basically, I cobble together all of these analytics, but like
Mm-hmm.
across X number of
Multiple
sites.
forms. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So you're saying that Google Analytics, Google Flights actually has all of that now built in.
It basically will tell you cheapest times that you can book. It would also tell you, hey, this price was again cheaper yesterday, cheaper a week ago. And then with the price tracking, it helps you to really understand, okay, is this the best time to book? So I feel like
Mhm.
it does have their own built in analytics that can definitely be very helpful for your planning.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that'll save me time from having to go on
Yes,
multiple pages to
yes,
cobble together a flight itinerary. Even though as fun as it is, I feel
yes.
like I end up looking what's that meme where you're tracing a serial killer on the wall
Yeah,
and it just you're
yeah,
like, okay, and if I fly from here to there and then from there
right.
to there, I save $100, but then I stay over for another 4 hours layover, so that's not worth
Exactly.
it.
Exactly.
It's an art.
And with Google, yeah, and with Google Flights, you can actually search from multiple airports. So at the same time, a lot of people they only
Ooh.
type in their main airport maybe, and then they make the search. But if you literally just put a comma after the airport name, you can literally add more. So let's say you do live in an area where you're close by to New York City, for example. You may decide that, hey, I don't mind. Let's say you live in Philly. So you may want to look for
Mhm,
flights that's from Philly. Then you may also look for like LaGuardia, JFK,
mhm,
all at once. So then you'll get all of the results to then show you how much cheaper, basically, if you do have to maybe fly out of New York, how much cheaper would it be compared to flying out from your local city? And obviously you
mm,
would have to decide on, okay, is it still more affordable if I have to still go to New York? Things like that.
mhm.
So you always want to look for like cities that are in your area. And then one of the other tips I would say, I actually have an entire chapter dedicated to travel hacking in my travel ebook
Ooh.
because I want to make travel more accessible to individuals who are able to travel hack, because it does require you to, depending on your location or your country of residence, credit, all of those things. So I am trying to make travel hacking more normalized for people like me, young people, especially other Virgin Islanders, for example, other young Black women, other young Black men, just so that I can see
Mhm.
more of us using travel hacking to be able to travel more, because that's been a big part of my story. I started travel hacking 2018 or so. So once I really got into travel hacking, it's been tremendous. Over the last 2 years, I started tracking all of my flights and hotels and rental cars that I've been able to book with points and miles. And I've already saved $30,000. And that's
Oh, wow.
including primarily flights. 99% of my travel hacks are flights. And then I do travel hack hotels as well. But I would say majority of my travel hacks are with flights. And that's me maybe taking one or two business class flights a year, or taking just regular economy flights as well, because obviously if you take economy, you can stretch your points more. I'm not too bougie where it's like, oh, I'm only
Mhm,
traveling business class. I only just really started getting into business class travel more recently for my longer travels, but it's not always
mhm.
possible, even with me using points. But I dedicated an entire chapter to travel hacking to be able to make it more accessible to other individuals.
Oh, I love that because I am clueless when it comes to travel hacking. I think that
Yeah.
I've done some things in regards to points and I
Mhm.
utilizing that for lounges, but for the most part, I know that I have some friends as well who are Delta brats and they're all about the points.
Yeah.
Yeah, something that just has gone over my head. So I'm excited to see something written out that is much more simpler, that makes the
Yes,
process more transparent. Because it
definitely.
gets a little intimidating. I feel like this topic of finances in general
Yes,
is intimidating, and then when you put it into points and all of these vague terms, it doesn't feel like a real thing, and if it just feels, "Is this a scam,
exactly.
or is anyone
Yes.
actually using this?"
Yes. And that's why I try to show how I'm using my points and miles on traveling with Nika. So let's say I did book a really affordable flight. So most recently, I concluded posting about my Iceland trip that I took in
Mhm,
the later half of 2023. And I focus on sharing all aspects of that trip. So, for example, I was able to travel hack and I was able to have all of my friends travel hack with me too. So we all were able to fly from New York to Iceland, and our taxes and fees were 10 US dollars. And I
oh,
was
wow.
able to put all of my friends on to be able to do that travel hack to go international. So that was really a big cost savings as well. And again, that helped me to be able to use the money that I probably would have spent on flights, on
Mhm.
accommodations, and doing fun and exciting activities in Iceland.
And just to get a little clearer on what you specifically did in Iceland, was that the
Yes.
combination of points or what was involved in kind of the hacking of that? I guess
Yeah,
it's
that's
still vague for me, so
yes. So basically, when I refer to travel hacking, primarily what I am referring to is when I am using credit card points and miles to be able to pay for a flight. One of the things
mm,
that a lot of people don't really differentiate with travel hacking is that you still have to pay the taxes and fees for the flight. So even though you are using your points and your miles to pay for the flight, there will be some type of taxes and fees associated. And that is
mm,
varies by the airline. Sometimes it's higher depending on the location that you're flying into. So, for example, if you're using, I'm just going to say a random place. So, London, for example, if you're flying into London,
mhm,
those taxes and fees are much higher flying into another European based city or country, right? So for
mhm,
Iceland, the taxes and fees with Delta were not that much. You know what I mean? We flew on Delta and we were just basically able to transfer points from different partners. So for me, for example, I use my Chase points and I actually transferred it to a transfer partner. And what a transfer partner is, basically, instead of having Delta points, I was able to use my Chase points and then book it through another partner. For example, at the time it was KLM and Air France. So they are all
mm.
partners in one network, and that's all that means. So you can book Delta flights using KLM or Air France because they're all in one partnership.
Ah, okay. No, that makes it a lot clearer for me. And I
Yes,
think that it's great that you can speak this in simpler terms for your audience too, because I think that's a really big key missing factor that is
yes,
intimidating for
it
people who
is.
haven't traveled before, especially to then have to learn this whole new language of what travel hacking is.
Yeah,
I hate that it's like another barrier. So I appreciate
exactly.
the
And I
content you're
think,
making.
yeah, and I think that's why it's important to be able to just show a regular person doing this and
Hmm.
showing that it's possible for someone else, even though you may not be in business class for every single trip.
Hmm.
If you're able to take at least one or two trips that was paid by points and miles, that is a win in my book. For just regular everyday people. Obviously, if you're following larger travel influencers, that's what they're doing for their job full time. So
Hmm.
of course, you're going to see more of them posting all business class and saying all these things. Oh, if my flight is more than 5 hours, I'm definitely going business class. That's not really the norm for everyday people, and that's okay.
Hmm.
So for me, I try to just show, hey, even though I may be able to use my points to maybe do one business class a year, I'm able to show this is how normal everyday people are traveling to some of those further destinations and making it affordable
Yeah.
for myself.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, because it does get a little jaded on social media, but the thing that you don't see
Exactly.
about social media and the people who get the flight sponsors is how many times they had to pitch in order to get that partnership, or all of the deliverables that
True.
have to go into whatever that brand partnership is. And so I think that it's good to share the back end things of some of these
Yes.
more real things that people see, or because at travel you're like, oh, this is so cool and beautiful. You don't see them waking up at 5 a.m. to take photos on a tripod in order to get the photos that you're looking
Yes.
at right now, right? Or the nights where you're
Right,
spent
right.
editing the content so that you can send it off to the brand partner.
Yep.
So that flight or that hotel or whatever activity it was actually is free because you completed that assignment that you said you would do for that partnership. So I
Yep.
love the realness
Yep.
in being able to share what actually goes into not just the travel, but also the content creatorship and the lifestyle as well. Because, yeah, the goal
Of
is to
course.
allow other people to be able to live the life, show them what's possible, but then also give them the tools to be able
Yes.
to do this for themselves. And
To do the
um,
same. Exactly.
exactly, exactly. Let's stop gatekeeping and actually give the good stuff out. So thank you for writing this ebook, because I also know what type of effort is involved in creating an ebook and sitting
Yes.
down and like structuring that
Yes.
and putting it out there. I, having gone into the creator side myself, I am so much more
Mhm.
appreciative of every single freebie, of every single ebook
Yep,
guide.
every
It's a labor of love.
honestly, because
Um,
it's definitely a labor of love, and it's a lot of work.
So yeah, whenever I see someone finish and put it out there, I'm like, "Oh man, that is amazing." Because I have 20 ideas sitting because I did not have the energy to push that through. So I'm excited, and I'm so glad that
Exactly.
you're sharing over 100 tips in this ebook that you have put out into the world so that everyone else can also
Yes.
travel and learn from all the things that you've learned on your travels. So thank you so much. We are
Thank
at the
you.
end, and yeah, I want to this has been a really fun conversation, and I'm so glad I've been able to get to know you and your background a little bit more. I just have a few more questions that I ask all of my guests before we wrap
Yeah.
up. So we
Mhm.
talked about connection, and you had shared some ways that you like to connect. So if you were to think back at the people that you have met on your travels and the connections that you have
Mhm.
felt were the most meaningful to you, whatever that means, maybe you're
Mhm.
still connected with them now, or maybe there was some deep connection or discovery that happened. How
Mhm.
did you make those meaningful connections, and what would you advise others who are looking for similar meaningful connection while they're traveling?
I think as someone that does solo travel and I do have a mix of travel experiences, one of the things that I recently started doing was joining certain travel groups where I'm traveling by myself, but I'm able to connect with other like minded travelers when I get to the destination. So I would say in the last year, I've been able to really connect with individuals from those travel groups that they have now turned into actual friends, where I've been able to go visit them after those travel group trips and being able to connect with them on a regular basis, literally talking with them on the phone, messages, things like that. And these were individuals that I would have never been able to be connected with if I didn't take the leap of saying, hey, I'm about to meet up with a whole bunch of strangers. I've never met any of them in my life, but we're going to this country and we're about to have a time. So that's how I would say is a great way that I've been able to connect with people and really form those long lasting bonds.
Yeah, that's amazing. And when you say travel groups, are these group trips or Facebook groups or
These
online
are,
form?
yeah, so these are actually actual travel groups where it's planned by an individual that runs a travel company, and they welcome individuals from all walks of life, different people, women, men, whomever. All the ones that I've been on so far has only been women, but they obviously, a lot of these travel groups, they're open to women, men, anyone, however you identify, and you're able to pay and you're coming on these trips being open minded and being able to meet new people.
That's also a great way if you are new to solo traveling is
Yes,
to get on a group trip and have the soft landing of a tour operator, tour guide, and a group of
yes,
people who are similarly like-minded, like-hearted to go on this adventure with. Because yeah, I've met such amazing friends through group trips as well. I love that
yeah,
advice.
absolutely.
And if you were to think back to the younger version of yourself at the start of your
Hmm.
travel journey, let's say, and
Hmm.
you could share one question or advice that you wish that you would have asked yourself sooner or told yourself sooner, what would that be?
Honestly, looking back, I would have definitely just told myself to take the leap. I think that even though I did do my solo trip in 2017, I think that there were opportunities that I could have taken to really do more. So, for example, when I think back on undergrad, I missed opportunities to study abroad, for example, and that would have given me the window that I was probably looking for, where I would have been able to travel beyond the places that I had traveled to at that time. That I think would have really impacted me very positively. Now that I'm seeing how, with me expanding my travels and going across multiple continents and taking those across the world trips, and how they've been able to really positively impact me now, I think that I would basically tell my younger self to take the leap and maybe take that study abroad and just go.
Yeah, I think that's always a great tip or advice is just push yourself. If you're having the feeling now, it's okay. Will that feeling go away, or will you have wished
Yes,
that you have done it sooner? And most of the time, it's I wish I had done it sooner. If you were
exactly.
if you were to give one tip to women that are considering traveling solo for the first time but are hesitant, what would that advice be to them?
Honestly, I would just say to start small. I think one of the things that people underestimate with solo travel is just getting started in their city, wherever they live.
Mhm.
Start taking those dinners and brunches and lunches by yourself. Start doing very small activities on your own, or maybe just with one other person. Just start getting yourself familiar with being by yourself and immersing yourself into different areas, because a lot of times we don't realize how much there is to do where we live. So there's things that you could do where you can treat yourself as a tourist and just start getting used to
Mhm.
what you would do when you do visit another state or another country. And once you start getting used to doing things on your own where you live, you'll start being more comfortable when you actually solo travel, because you're pretty much going to be mimicking what you did in your hometown when you go to that solo travel destination. So that would be definitely my advice.
Yes, and such underrated advice too, because I think there's this glamorization of I'm going to take this big leap and I'm going to go all the way across the world and by myself. And I'm gonna stay in a hostel that's an hour away
Yeah,
from the city center, and I'm gonna do it all
right.
in the biggest way possible, in the most uncomfortable way possible, just to
Exactly.
show myself I can. And so you can learn the lessons in different ways, and one of which is small steps
Exactly.
because those skills are transferable. Yes.
They are. Yep.
Ooh, okay. So we are at our last question, and we started on play, and I
All
like to
right.
play as well. So, how is play a part of your life now? And what do you do in your life, maybe on a daily basis, that feels like play to you?
I think one of the things with play is I really gravitate towards just feeling and being like I'm a child again. Just
Mhm.
experiencing new adventures when I do travel and being free, going back to the bike scenario and
Mhm.
biking and just exploring. I still practice a lot of that in my current travels and also just my daily life. I like being able to explore and try new things even in my city where I'm living. I try to do a lot of different activities and go out there, try new things, and I try to just mirror that in my travels as well, doing new, exciting adventures and activities.
That's great. Yeah, and I think that's very true to your play style. So that's really good to hear
Yes,
that you've incorporated that back in, especially in your travels as well. It's very important to cater your travel activities and travel style to you and not necessarily what on social media or what on an itinerary
exactly.
that's already created. It's very important if you really love doing explorer type of activities, then yes, those are the things that you want to lean into. And if you are more of a creative style, then maybe lean into the art, lean into the classes that will bring you there and finding the people in that area. So that's beautiful that you are still having play as part of your daily as well as your travel life. I
Yes,
love to see that.
absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing everything. I'm excited. Yes. And it's been so great connecting with you. What and how can people reach out to you and find out all of the content that you've made and also buy your ebook?
Yes, thank you so much again for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm glad to be able to connect with your audience and traveling with Nika, and that's Niqua. I can be found on social media platforms like Instagram, YouTube, Facebook, a little bit on TikTok, but not too much. I'm still getting used to TikTok. Those are the three platforms that have a very strong presence. And if you're definitely into vlogs and like content, video content, long form, YouTube is definitely where to find me, but I post a lot on Instagram and Facebook, short form content where you guys would be able to really see a little bit more of my day to day travel tips, hacks, and strategies. And you can purchase my travel ebook on my website. You can go to travelingwithnika.com/slash ebook, or you can just go to Traveling with Nika and you would be able to see the ebook tab on my website to be able to purchase your ebook. And yeah, I'm very excited to be able to welcome you guys to my community and my platform. Thank you for sharing your audience with me, and I look forward to connecting with you guys. Thank you.
All right, everyone, that's all we have time for today. But before you jet set off to your next adventure, I want to remind you about Passport to Connection. This is an incredible platform that's going to be your one stop shop for finding meaningful connections in any city that you explore. Search for communities, apps, groups, resources that perfectly match your vibe, whether you're an extrovert or an introvert. Head over to travelnotsescape.com/friends and sign up for Passport to Connection today. Thank you so much for joining me on today's episode and happy travels. Until next time, keep exploring, connecting, and playing. Stay fun.